People, process, tech, innovate with the best. The Community Builders Podcast.
All right, everybody. We got Johnny and Matthew from Homefile on the podcast today. How's it going, guys?
Good. I kind of feel like I'm in trouble, though. You called me Matthew.
Maddie? What? I'm just
Well, that's one way. That's one way you could call me. I just
There we
call
go.
it Matt's fine.
Okay, Matt.
Yeah, mine's the opposite. My name's John normally, but I've gone by Johnny since my grandfather named me Johnny Appleseed was the nickname. So you can call me Johnny Well, but we're fired up to be on the podcast. Love all the other episodes, so we're thrilled to be here.
Yeah, let's do a little intro. And then we can jump into it. Johnny, I've known you for quite some time during the Procore days, but let's pass it over to Matt.
I'll try to be brief. Most recently, I was one of the lead AI strategists at Dell, kind of helping to transform kind of their whole e-commerce and manufacturing process with AI. And before that, I was the chief design officer of artificial intelligence at Oracle. And I spent my career pretty much doing innovation work and kind of at the forward edge of technology and what's possible. I've been in AI since about 2011, doing a lot of work with military. I've done work with DARPA and other different kind of military applications. And I started my career actually as a animator at Disney and a toy designer and a game designer and Nintendo and Sega and whatnot. So kind of run the gamut.
That's awesome. Johnny, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Austin, Texas. Worked with Will for a while over at Procore. Did just business development, done over 30 million in annual recurring revenue and multiple different companies, but predominantly in kind of the B2B kind of development world. And kind of it originally was kind of in the real estate world. So very excited to chat with you a little bit about what we're doing with the real estate technology. And just wanted to double tap on that's where another area where I was super excited to kind of get involved was because I've known Matt for over 20 years, and he's the closest thing I'll get to like a Steve Jobs type brain in my life, where he just understands the world and where it should be in the next 5 to 20 years, that no one else can kind of see that far ahead. And his ability to not only connect like the ease of use, the importance on simplicity with like the artistic side of him, as well as just the security and the infrastructure side. So having kind of both those talents is really exciting. So back to you, Will.
That's awesome.
Yeah. By the way,
Yeah.
I'm humbled by every time he says that. I'm not sure how to respond to it, so I'm always just kind of quiet.
That's great. So
Compliment.
it's good. It's a good combination.
Yeah, I'm very excited to, I'm sure we'll get into kind of how we met and where all this came from, but definitely am one, if not the biggest investors, Matt. I don't know exactly, but yeah, big investor, very passionate about it. And obviously what it's doing is helping me tremendously daily in my own personal life.
That's
Yeah,
great.
and I was just gonna say I love working with Johnny and having him around because he portrays all the energy that I don't have.
Yep.
He's such an extrovert, right? I'm the opposite. You bury me into a room and I'm cranking away. So it's awesome to be associated with Johnny. And like you said, I've known him for a long time, and we've been able to build a great friendship.
I'd say you're an extrovert on text though, and Slack. You really bring the heat on those two communication realms. So not a total introvert. I'll look up on like a Saturday afternoon. I have like 100 I'd run text. I'm like, man, I'm blown up today. And it's like all for Matt. I got another idea. Call me.
Yeah,
That's
I
awesome.
know. I'm a little nuts.
Great. Well, tell us how this all started. What's the origin story with Homefile?
Yeah.
All right, I'll take it.
Yeah, go
Matt.
for it.
I think you are going to get most of these, so I'll take this one.
All right.
So once again, known Matt for a long time. He's been very successful with other businesses he's done as an entrepreneur, and for whatever reason in the past, the timing didn't really work out for us to really be really involved or invest.
Half the time,
but
Johnny didn't get my ideas. That's the problem.
I got him, but I just had a baby, my first baby. Okay, that's my excuse. Okay, I was trying to figure out how to move back to Austin. But anyways, being in California, where it's 78 and sunny every day, except June gloom, y'all complain about out there in Santa Barbara. And Texas, it's typically pretty hot, but every once in a while in February, just it freezes like crazy. And they call it the Great Texas Freeze. You haven't heard about it? Probably a lot of California listeners, people all over. Check it out. It was a really big deal, a ton of loss, it was just a disaster down here in terms of property loss and personal loss. People lost power for weeks. There were some deaths. I personally lost water. I kept my power, thank gosh, but lost power for, I think it's 3 or 4 days. I couldn't leave the house. And so Matt called and I picked it up and he was like, how are you? Like, are you and the kids okay? Like, what's going on? I'm like, it's not too bad. I'm walking down to my neighbor's house slowly to like basically sit there for 3 hours to get like a glass of water filled because he's the only one that actually has water dripping. But overall, we're pretty good. And I'm like, how about you? He's like, well, I'm alive, but I lost all the landscaping. I just put like 15 or 16 grand into landscaping because he's a big gardener. And my tankless water heater's all busted. I've been looking for my warranty for that and my warranty for my landscaping and my closet, going through paperwork, going through Dropbox emails. I can't find anything. And I was just thinking, like, if I can just tap my phone and see, all my assets and the health of my assets in one place, why can't I manage my home? Why is it so archaic? Because it is my biggest asset I own. And I kind of paused and
Mhm.
realized, like, me too. I think it's like probably, I don't know the exact number, but it's 80-90% of probably the world's population. It's their home or it's maybe an investment property. They have multiple. And he's like, that's a problem. And I was like, that is definitely a problem. And it was probably 20-30 seconds. He's like, well, you want to fix it? You want to solve it? And I was like, let's do it. That's where I got involved. I'm sure Matt's brain was tickling before then. So I'll let you dig deeper into him with Matt and kind of where it came from.
Awesome.
Yeah, I can jump in there if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
One of the things that I've done over my career is kind of always tried to think about ways of bringing a lot of this technology down to the small guy. A lot of times all this technology was all kind of up at the enterprise level, and they had all the good stuff, and you'd have to, if you're a small business, you had to pull stuff together, and it was just always a pain in the rear end. And so, the first thing I thought about was like, okay, I have data in my utility bills that are in that login, and I've got data in my insurance, and I've got data in, all of these, my cable company and blah, blah, blah. Right. So I started to realize that it's a data problem when you
Mhm.
start thinking about like home ownership and home economy. It's a data problem. So we ended up going out and spending probably a good year, Johnny, don't you think? A good year on just talking to everybody in the home, kind of in the home economy space. We talked to insurance companies, we talked to service providers, we talked to all of these different builders, and we all had our assumptions on where we would start, where our penetration point was.
Yeah, the biggest, the biggest insurance companies you can name, you probably see their commercial like 50 times an evening. The biggest like home service companies, they're blasting now commercials. The biggest
Mhm.
credit unions. It wasn't just one specific industry, but every single one of them, same thing. Like, yeah, this is a huge problem. This is a huge problem.
Mhm.
And yeah, and basically because the way that everybody was thinking about it was like, okay, well, I'm a homeowner, so I have to sit down and manually type all this stuff in and blah, 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 right? No one believed that it could be solved. And so we'd go to go to these huge insurance companies. They're like, yeah, no one's going to do that. No one's going to want to enter that information in. We're like, no, this isn't about manually entering stuff. And so and the way that we started with this is we started at the very foundation of, we knew we were going to build an AI company, right? An AI platform. And so we started at the very fundamental bottom, which is the record, right? How do you take all of this disparate data and put it into a verified report that basically spans ownership, and not just me owning it, but the guy that buys it from me and everybody else? And how do you make these records transferable and blah, 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 right? So we started realizing it all came down to that core record. And so that's what we started with. and we built it, and we'd bring people in and we'd show people, and there, a lot of people would be like, a lot of companies are like, I don't see it. I don't see it. I still think it's too hard. And, so we
And
just,
also the feedback there too. Sorry, Matt, but like
no, go ahead.
a lot of them, one, they all realize it 100% across the board, right? Whether you're a small builder to the biggest builders, they all validated it's a problem, not only in their world as the home service provider, but also them as personally as a home owner, right? But we either ran across the folks being like, it can't be done. It's too much time for people to bring all that information together, right? Themselves, right? Or we're building it ourselves, which we'll probably get to somewhere naturally on why that just doesn't work. Because I'm sure everyone on the line probably has some provider, whether it's your builder, your plumber, or whatever, that has some portal that says, hey, manage your home here, right? But there's a lot more to the home than just your services or just your utilities or just your taxes, right? And no one wants to log into 12 different portals to manage their home.
Yeah. So from my experience, taking a step back, we don't use Homefile yet. I'd like to definitely dig into it and try it out. But currently we have our Google Drive, and then we have a bunch of different folders. So we have a folder for historical tax returns, invoices across any project that we've done at our house, insurance, photos, all of our purchase documents, and that's about it. I mean, there's, pretty simple. It seems like there's a lot more we could be tracking, and having it in an app where it's easily accessible would be great. But I guess, taking a step back from like a 30,000-foot view, if I'm a brand new listener, I've just heard about Homefile today, what would you say is like, what are you accomplishing from like the highest level?
Well, I think you bring up an interesting point. Let me back up to kind of what you said about where you put your stuff. Yeah, how is that data that's sitting in a Dropbox? What's it doing for you?
Yeah, nothing. It's just sitting in Google Drive.
Yeah. And so how much did that and how much of that data changes on a monthly and sometimes even on a weekly basis?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot that, one thing I can think of right now too is just, we've over the past 6 years we've owned this house. We've, redone the bathroom, then we re-landscaped the backyard, then we put up a new fence, and then we're doing the front yard. And there's like all these invoices that we've paid over the years. And like we've probably gotten like 50% of them into this folder, which isn't great. But if we ever go to sell the house and we want to report these expenses to reduce our capital gains, it's just going to be, we have to dig everything up and try to find it. So stuff like that's happening all the time. And if you're not on top of actually, filing the information, you could lose out on a lot of money in the future.
Yeah.
On that same note, Will, like if you wanted to sell your home eventually, filling out that seller's disclosure or improvements, sounds like you're pretty advanced compared to probably most homeowners, but that's still based on where you're currently at is a process. It's going to take a process to say, hey, we bought this house for 800K and we put 300K into it, and here are all the invoices to defend why it's worth you paying 1.1 for our house versus 950 for the place next door hasn't done anything. So that's a great kind of point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually even say on top of that, it's like, you're going to wait until you're at the very end to find out what your capital gains risk is. Why? Right. Why not track that now? So you can use that as a means to better plan your portfolio. And it also gives you a target. So, the more stuff you add, right, that you can assign to capital expenditures, right, lowers your overall, capital gains risk. So like every little thing that you do around your home, right, adds up completely. And because there's no way to track it, like I would venture to guess right now, if you went in and said, okay, I bought all of this stuff for my home last year, how much did I pay on income tax or state tax?
Oh yeah.
Well,
I mean,
that's
all the
deductible.
furniture and all that.
Yeah, that's all
Yeah.
deductible. But if you don't have a way to track it, it's a pain.
So let's just take that one specific instance, because I'm sure a lot of people aren't tracking expenses well, and this comes up a lot when they're trying to sell their house. What does Homefile do to help with that process?
You want to take this, Johnny?
Yeah.
It's really simple, right? So the majority of the times when you're either shopping for insurance, buying a new house, buying a new asset, whatever it is, right? It's all about the record. How can you prove how well something was taken care of? And
Hmm.
the provenance, right? Think about an antique car. The fact that you have provenance makes the car worth so much more than if you don't have any history of it.
Hmm.
And we believe that that's the exact same thing that's going to happen with houses. We've seen it with cars, used cars, right? It directly impacts the overall value of what you can get for your asset.
So I
Uh,
see what you mean. So you're saying like you run a VIN number on a car, you can see every time it was serviced, any issues it had, from the day it was originally purchased. You're saying with something like Homefile, giving a buyer a clear record of everything that happened on that house, everything that was fixed, every upgrade that was made will give that buyer a lot more confidence going into the sale, which could effectively increase how much they want to pay for the house.
Absolutely. So think about, yeah, okay, well, the person just replaced their HVAC unit, 5 years ago. Well,
Hmm.
okay, I'm going to go in there and go, okay, well, hopefully it's 5 years old. So, but the reality is if you have home file, you'll know that it's under warranty. And when you need to go create a repair for it, you've got all the information to go create the repair. And ultimately to the point with home file is you'll be able to schedule the right type of service that you need based off of your warranty, based off of all of the information that we have around your unit. And we can tell you how many other company customers, and homeowners across the country have the same unit and what kind of problems you can anticipate that you need to be proactive on.
Hmm. Yeah. And then,
So,
yeah. Go.
go on, just to say, and I think the thing that's really important that really for us differentiates what we're trying to do is while that home record is the really, really important thing, right, for the homeowner, the reality is there is a whole ecosystem of businesses, services, capabilities that surround the homeowner, that
Hmm.
it's very difficult to find the right ones that fit within the expectations that I have as a homeowner. Just because, the guy down the street uses this guy doesn't mean he's going to work for me. My perfection level or my expectation level is going to be different, right? So it also gets to the point where when you think about a home, it's not just a home, right? It is a living breathing thing that you happen to own and occupy for a period of time. And at some point,
Yeah.
whether it's you're retired, you want to, estate planning, whatever, it's going to get moved to somebody else.
Yep.
Yeah. And just to double tap on that before we move on, I mean, going back to why use Homefile, why not just keep doing what I'm doing? Why change? It's simple, right? Save money, right? Save time and reduce stress, reduce risk. Save money. You just mentioned one, increase resale value, prevent costly breakdowns is a big one. A story I had is just when they rolled out early in the early days when Homefile was just documents, kind of just an organized kind of flavor and better UI than Dropbox, purpose built for own management. I was traveling in Houston. My wife calls me and says, our rental property renters just called and said there's a huge water leak in the house. Like, what do we do? And I was like, we'll call the insurance agent ASAP. She's like, who is it? Who is
Yeah.
that? And so I
Yep.
literally pulled over, opened Homefile, found our policy, and I forwarded it to her. And she called them immediately, and they got remediation on there right away with the fans and all the things they do to avoid mold and all the terrible things. And I asked them, like, hey, if we would have called you a day or two later, a couple hours later, like, what would have been the impact? Like, it would have probably been like 15 to 25 grand more in damage. So that's just like
Yeah.
an example, not of a simple example, but another one, benefit from warranties. I mean, how many people out there an expensive appliance goes out and they reach out about the warranty, which expired like a month or two before, and that's 15K. HVAC can be very expensive, right? Optimizing service costs, another thing, just making sure like you're not getting hosed. I mean, at the end of the day, I think a lot of the home service providers out there are great. A lot of them are not. And the ones who are not transparent about their pricing, they're just, if they can just get you right, and you're paying 2, 3, a lot more than what you should be paying, and then get by with that, they will. So just bring transparency to what pricing for a plumber should be in your area, I think is great. Not a lot of people don't want to spend all day on Yelp or Angie's List, having their data stolen and then being called 1,000 times and like doing some sort of bid out for, a handyman to come out and do a couple things.
Yeah,
And
you
then
guys
just,
could have your Homefile trusted network of vendors, preferred vendors in your system that people have vouched for.
yeah, absolutely. And that's something I know Matt's working on, to where we're only allowing the A+ accredited business, entities in. And if they drop based on feedback, right, they're out, right? So that's a whole nother broken system that Homefile is solving for the home service companies and the homeowners at the same time. Is people don't want to just go and click the top of Google anymore. Whoever's the highest bidder. There's a company in Austin, I'll leave their name out, but we used them, 4 years ago, and they kind of screwed us over. And they're doing commercials, and they're just everywhere, right? They have the most money, but at the end of the day, a lot of times it's the small guy that doesn't have a website, right? That's actually the most trusted. He'll come back. He's not going to charge you to refix something, right? To be able to find those people and giving power to those people that are the best in your area, and not them having to pay and outbid these people they can, just knowing that you are getting the best people for the service versus who's paying the most. And I think AI has really changed that already, but Homefile kind of double clicks on that.
Yeah, it's kind of piling onto that. We have a tankless water heater we put in about 5 years ago, and I know that I probably have to flush it out or descale it at some point, but I'm just like, I don't know when I'm supposed to do that. And I wish I could get like a notification when it needs to happen, and potentially even connected with the vendor that could do the descaling for me. So, having a tool that would help me like maintain the different appliances at my house would be really helpful.
Yeah. Just another example would be just reducing the risk. So like a lot of people are underinsured, right? I live in Austin, where it just, a lot of homes doubled. I think mine might have during COVID with everyone moving here, but I think it's kind of, dropped down a little bit. But at the same time, like how many my neighbors, right, have increased their dwelling coverage after their house doubled? Probably not many, right? And that doesn't even take into account, that the rebuild costs have gone up so much as well. So just helping people avoid like what could be financial disaster, right? Their home, a lot of the research we ran was like 70% of people have way over 50% of their net worth in their home, when it should be closer to 30%. And so, if they're not fully taking care of that and avoiding what may not happen, a fire, right? Y'all are impacted by that mudslides in Santa Barbara, but like just making sure you can sleep at night knowing that if something like that happens, like you're covered if you have to rebuild your house, I think just helps people sleep better at night.
For sure. Hey,
Dropbox want to do that. Yeah.
yeah, no, that's great. I want to actually chat with Matt here. Let's chat more about the technology and what's really going behind the scenes with Homefile.
Yeah. Awesome. So I think, we've all heard this and AI that and ChatGPT and Claude and all these kind of things. But, our position is that the next phase of AI is gonna, you can start to hear the rumblings of is vertical AI, which is really focused on solving very specific problems and challenges. And we've actually built a system that is what we call as a data and an agentic infrastructure for a home economy. That means that everything in our system is agentic. So we can go out and if someone needs something, if a homeowner needs to do something with an insurance company, we have agents that go out inside of our system that go out and connect to the right people, to the right things. Our whole system is meant where it is a massive network of agents that can be turned on and off to accomplish tasks. Most homeowners and most folks don't quite realize that what agents are is their action, right? Their tasks. They go accomplish different things very specifically. And so what we've done is we've taken a different approach to our architecture than what a lot of companies do, meaning that we don't use like multiple LLMs. We have developed a model that's unbelievably efficient, and that allows us to keep controls for our customers, costs down. We've got all the permissions-based systems, so anything that comes in and out of the house is permission based. So if
Mm-hmm.
a homeowner wants to say, "Hey, Miss Interior Designer, I'm going to share my information with you. Here's what you can see," or an insurance company, or anybody that is wanting to have and provide value back to that homeowner, it's a mutual engagement. It's
Mm-hmm.
not, and I'm applying for a HELOC and to a big one of these companies, and then the next thing I know, I get spammed forever.
Yep.
What we've really done is we've looked at what the future of is, how people are going to actually operate. And there's three things that are really important about that. One is, the whole reason why we call it Homefile, it's not just because it's a quote unquote file. It's really about the fact that there's 158 billion or 150 billion dollars expected in humanoid home robots. And
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, great. I get a home robot that can fold the clothes, but if he has no context to what's happening in the home, how's he going to actually function? So the idea is that what our system is doing is we're fundamentally building a brain for the home. So every robot, every smart device, everything in there is operating under the control of the homeowner.
Yeah. That's next level.
Yeah, I kind of went a little nuts with it. And what's
No,
kind of
it's
interesting is,
that's the
well,
vision right there, right? That's the
yeah.
bigger vision.
Well, the other thing too that, I'm one of these guys that I'm like, let me see if I can build it. And really what I did was I ended up building our core of our AI platform basically with a big glass window, where people will have engineers going out and having to control all the different elements within an agentic system or an AI system. We've actually created a window into the brain of our AI. And we can see what information is going, how is it working, where do we need to improve our prompts, where do we need to do all these different things to make these different parts of the system even more efficient. So we've I don't know anybody that I've seen that can basically say I can open up my AI and show you how everything is working
Mm-hmm.
and have control over every aspect of it from one single point.
Yeah. I'm just trying to wrap my head around all that. That's a big vision. I think it makes sense. How do you like, let's say you're going to pitch this to investors, how do you pitch the immediate value of Homefile without getting them going too deep in the weeds of like the bigger vision?
Yeah, I mean, we started out initially thinking about going, because we were trying to pitch along the level of what we were building, because we knew that pitching, as you know, right, is always a really interesting process because there's no pattern to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so we just got a lot of feedback, and finally, I got to the point where I realized that everybody was seeing us strictly as a home management app or an inventory app.
Mm-hmm.
And they were having a really hard time bridging the gap between what their perception is and what the reality is. And that's one of the reasons why we've been so capital efficient, is because we've needed to be able to create the product and enable it, or to be able to demonstrate to somebody what actually it is. And we're finally there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the reality is it's an infrastructure play. We're moving into this next model of technology. AI is going to consume everything. Every company is going to be somehow AI enabled in some capacity, whether it's MCP services, whatever it is, APIs, whatever. And so, what is, and on top of that, because of the way that AI works, SEO, the way that everybody's been, especially a small business, everybody, what they've been doing is no longer going to work, right? Because what ultimately happens in a world of AI is you need signals. And the signals are the things that drive trust. And what AI looks for is the long-standing relationship of constant value delivery.
Okay.
Those are the things that are going to be driving the engagement for the companies tomorrow. And so it's no longer where a lot of companies today focus on the top of the funnel in conversions. The reality is everybody's been not paying attention to the fact that it's the relationship that matters now and how you perform over that relationship. Because the better you perform over a longer relationship, the more trust that AIs will recommend you.
So what did you have to invent or rethink to make this possible?
Everything. I mean, the thing that's funny about this is when you're trying to do something that no one gets, right? And no one quite understands yet is one is it's an unbelievably frustrating process because, Johnny will attest to this. I'd get really pissed off listening to, somebody complaining about how nobody would manually enter data. And I'm like, you're missing the point, right?
Mhm.
The point is AI solves all that. Take a picture. That's all you need. Or a video. That's all you need. And that's what we've been doing. And so we've also been trying to find the right investor, right? Because as you know, finding that I always kind of say this is finding an investor is you're looking for a partner, right? And everything has to be in sync. And so, we've also been really picky about kind of the folks that we're trying to raise money from. And because there's one half of the market that wants to go after, immediate ARR, and that's the way you're going to value your business, right? Well, you tell me how, unless you're going to go create a generative AI product, which, quite frankly, all of those are going to be dead because the way that these models are moving towards is these wrapper products are going to go away, right? Or you go after the infrastructure play, which is it's ARR, of course, but it's really about data because data in the world of AI is the value. Because if you have clean data, that data is valuable to almost everybody.
Yep. So let me ask you a question. Let's say I get Homefile today and I want to get all my information in there and get all set up. What does like the implementation process look like? And how do you guys handle that?
Yeah. So right now it's, we're evolving, right? So we've just released our whole front end AI assistant, and he's called a Homey. And
Okay.
by the way, he has a cabin up in the Northeast, and he goes up there for hunting and fishing, and he's got a whole backstory that he can kind of tell you about. But basically, you can use him, and he'll basically take anything, any document, any picture of an appliance, whatever, and immediately be able to take that and actually add that into your home file. And what we do when that happens is we go out and we match all of the data associated with that product, and we build a care plan, a maintenance plan. We tell you, we keep monitoring on whether it's got recalls, whether there's repair issues, whatnot, so that you don't ever have to worry about that again. Homey will let you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So-
One example is that like rock hit my windshield. So I need to talk to my insurance guy who's got my auto in my home this afternoon. And I just basically uploaded a picture of my policy to Homey and just said, hey, what questions should I ask my insurance agent about my policy to make sure I'm rightly insured? So I got 3 or 4 great questions I'm like prepared to talk to about, right? That Homey spit out for me, which is really cool just by taking a picture of the policy, which was like 1 second. Another thing that was kind of funny is I actually asked Homey to tell me a joke about my house this morning. He said, why'd the house break up with the landlord? Because it felt like it was always getting taken for granted.
That's awesome. So just to clarify that first point, Johnny. So you said you asked Homey, you upload your insurance and ask it a few questions. If your insurance was already uploaded, could you just ask Homey right from the app?
Yep.
Like what? Yeah,
Absolutely.
So is there like a Homey chatbot inside of the mobile app that you can ask it about essentially any document living inside of Homefile?
That's right. Yep. And so we do it. We're doing it in a couple things. It's not right now. We think even an app is got too much friction. So once you create an account and you get set up, you can do it all through SMS.
Okay, great. So it's just you're just texting.
You
Okay,
can
it's
text
kind of
only.
yeah, it kind of sounds like I don't know how much you guys know about trunk tools, but trunk tools connects into your Procore account, and then you essentially have an SMS going, and you can text it any information you want and ask about a construction project. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
what?
you can,
similar.
Yeah.
So like I went around and took pictures of all my model numbers on my most expensive appliances. And I
Yeah.
asked it like, which of my appliances still have a warranty and when do they expire? And I just did
Okay.
that through the chat.
That's cool.
You can also
yeah.
talk to it. So if some people prefer just talking, I personally like used to Google everything, and now I just saved Gemini as a app at the bottom of my iPhone, and I'll just pull it up and I'll say, hey, how do I fix this? Or is this a good deal on this item? And I'll talk to it, and I'll talk to it on drives to prep for meetings and stuff. And that's where it's going, right? To
Hmm.
where I wish I had it back in the freeze, because all of my neighbors are saying like, what kind of water heater do you have? What do we need to do to make sure our houses don't, have issues, and how do we turn off the water, and all these different things. And, rather than looking like a dope who doesn't know how to manage a home, right? I could have just gone to Homey and been like talking to it, right? Through it.
Hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Question for you guys. What has been the biggest lesson you've learned so far launching this app, building it out? Any thoughts on that?
Patience.
Yeah.
Patience. I'm a mover, and like I like to move fast. And Johnny will attest to this, right? We've been working on this for about 4 years total. Um,
Hmm.
and so I mean, there's been a lot of trial and error, and there's been a lot of things like that, and the fact that this team that we've been doing it is pretty much been doing it for the backside of this, right? So we're all working like crazy. But I've also realized that for me, the evolution of the technology also, we needed to be at pace with that,
Hmm.
because, like now we're at a point where we can secure AI. We can be very smart around our security models. We can do a lot of things where we create a lot of security around people's data, right? In
Hmm.
ways that become very, very challenging for anybody that knows how complicated encryption is, right? So Bitcoin or whatever, you've got the same kind of thing. There's a lot of different ways in which you can create an immutable record.
Yep.
And patience is, and again, right, a perfect example is I fundamentally believe that titles, deeds, all should be utilized as NFCs or NFTs, because at the end of the day, they're a mutable resource and immutable. Put them on a ledger, right? Now all of a sudden you've got, and people have been trying to do that, but it's controlled by a lot of really, really big companies that are regulatory against that. There's going to be a tremendous amount of change that's going to happen, but at the end of the day, you've also got to make sure that you're ahead of the technology curve, but not too far ahead that it's
Yep.
buggy.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. What would it, so patience is kind of your biggest lesson so far. What's been the best piece of advice you've received while building this app?
Oh, Johnny, I'll let you go first on that one. I need to think about that.
Yeah, I think the challenge with this big idea is it's a big idea, right? I mean, there's apps out there that are just focused on tracking your utilities, right? And so what we're saying is these very kind of siloed type solutions, but people don't want to have a folder with 10 apps to manage their home, right? And so it's a really big idea, but also being able to really simplify it has been kind of I think the best advice we've got, because we'll come out and be like, hey, this is everything it can do, which is really awesome, because these are all things people need. They need help with insurance, they need help fighting property tax, they need help finding the right plumber that's not going to screw them, they need help finding the right HVAC person that's not going to charge them $1,000 to fill up their coolant without doing a leak detection text, and then it's all gone, which happened to me about 6 months ago. But at the same time, like that, hey, keep your North Star and everything else will just fall into place, I think was some really great advice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the one thing that I would say on that, right? And I'm gonna Johnny knows I'm that comes back to a bigger problem, right? That we've encountered and challenge that we've tried to encounter, which is if people don't truly understand AI, they will never understand what you're trying to do. And what I mean by that is we have been focused 100% on two things. One, creating an immutable record over time and making sure that is really, really tight and wrapping that up. And the second piece that we've been doing is creating a platform that we knew we could connect to something bigger and looking at how we could get information into the system frictionless.
Hmm.
That's what we've been focused on. And the problem is that when you sit there and say that, and a lot of folks will be like, well, how are you going to go to market with that? And they want to go, well, you need to get focused on just doing inventory. You're great at, you can just do inventory. And, you got a bunch of folders and stuff like that. That's value right there. And I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. And this is the challenge when you deal with in different types of investors is they all have a different opinion.
Yep.
And to Johnny's point, right? It is really good. It's awesome to hear kind of what's your baby step, or North Star is great, but what are you doing today? That's always great to hear because it's really important to always get that beat into your head so that you're always thinking about what you have to do, right?
Hmm.
But the reality in this business was if we couldn't build the foundation properly and take our time to build that foundation the right way, none of this other stuff is going to work.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
we had to take our time to build that fundamental. And we've learned, oh my gosh, the amount of information and strategic value learnings along this way.
That's great to
Yeah, and
hear.
I think a good point of that is that going back to every investor is a little bit different in terms of what they think and the questions they ask and what they think you should do. Where, I'd say a good chunk of some of the very successful investors we talked to, they were super fired up about this, but I think from their window, since they're more in the rental, vacation rental, say they've had vacation rental success at like an Airbnb or HomeAway, or they're in the multifamily. They saw it there and we're like, absolutely, there's a huge play, right? And multifamily or condos or whatnot. That being said, like we're trying to nail right what we're doing first, right? So just not being swayed for investors from your mission is also something I think we've learned where maybe it took us a certain amount of investor calls to get that scan in to be like, okay, no matter what they no matter what they say, like this is our course. But I think we've done a really good job of sticking on that course. And that's why like we're ready to
Yep.
really unlock all our hard work now that we are plugging in the AI to after bringing in all this information with GE, appliances you already have and already recognizing them and pulling up your warranty. It's really cool, the foundation we've built. And now people can, are now seeing it in terms of the magic sauce of taking a picture or talking to Homey and the beauty of AI actually personally knowing what your device is, but also being able to tap into so much information that would take a human being weeks and weeks to try and consolidate.
That's great, guys. It was great chatting with you. I want to ask though, how can potential investors get a hold of you guys?
I'd love any email, phone call, matt@homefile.com. And then my number is 512-806-5011. Call me. Love to talk.
Yeah, I think we're also going to send you, Will, a link to put in somewhere into the podcast that allow folks to directly engage with the Homey type technology to learn more.
Yeah,
Matt,
that'd
is
be
that
awesome.
correct?
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
do it. Yeah, we'll share that link on Spotify and LinkedIn. And yeah, no, it's really cool. This seems like a big issue. It's something that I'm definitely running into with my own house. And yeah, having that system of record going back from the moment you bought the house up until you potentially sell it, seeing all the historical records, having a text thread, you can literally ask any questions about insurance, warranty, taxes, whatever it might be, would make things really easy. And yeah, your vision in the future of AI sounds really interesting as well.
Yeah, and let me just leave this with you. We didn't even talk about the value to the service partner.
Mhm.
Poof. Our model is crazy for how much value we can provide to a home service company
Oh yeah.
and insurance company and everybody else.
So just to confirm, is your ideal customer, is it B2C? Is it B2B? What are you guys looking to do?
Both. And that's the challenge, right?
But like
Is
where are you gonna focus though? Because you got to kind of
oh yeah,
focus
yeah.
on one lane first, right?
Yeah, no. So our focus is right now B2B, and we're going after home service companies that have recurring services in the business to increase their lifetime value of their customer.
Okay, great. That's good to clarify.
Yeah, and
Yep.
we basically doubled the service providers we have over the last 7 months, right? From real estate, realtors, to mortgage lenders, folks who do HELOCs, plumbers, right?
Mhm.
We got some really sizable home service companies, and we've got some, we got one guy that does landscaping that barely has a website. So it's cool
Nice.
to democratize that and be able to provide anybody that understands the value that they're providing and automating, right? In terms of the services and not having to get on if someone's log into a portal or sit on a phone tree in order to like schedule the HVAC cleaning maintenance to come. It's just it's literally, you talk to Homey or you click a button type of thing. So
Mhm.
there's just a ton of value in that regard in terms of finding service providers that are vetted, but also interacting with them, paying with them, scheduling with them, and then collecting that data from them back into Homefile.
Awesome. Well, good stuff, guys. Glad we had a chance to connect. Johnny, it's always good reuniting with you after working at Procore for almost 10 years together. And then
In the
Matt,
Yeah, it's
trenches.
great. It's
yeah,
great to see what y'all are doing over there, and I'm definitely interested myself in investing into some of these awesome projects that you're building over there at Presidio.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, if you know anyone that wants to get involved, have them reach out to me and we can show them our next project, San Marcos Ranch in Santa Barbara. And yeah, happy to show you the deal.
That sounds awesome.
Please,
Yeah, awesome. Well, sounds good, guys. Thanks for the chat, and we'll all be talking soon. Best of luck with everything.
No, thank you. Appreciate the
thanks,
opportunity.
Will.
All right, thanks. See ya.
Yeah. Bye.